So folks, we have a ton of good news about the fourth stimulus check that I want you to know. Be sure to stay until the end of this video to find out the most important stimulus check information. So as the crisis continues, there have been growing calls for further economic support for American people and businesses. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer are the two top lawmakers that have been laying out the new plan for more stimulus relief for the American people. Pressure on lawmakers has risen as gas prices and the cost of everyday necessities continue to surge. Right now, the good news is that there is a fourth stimulus check that will be going out to people. That comes as state lawmakers across the nation have approved new stimulus legislation. Some states have also introduced extra crisis-related programs that state residents can access. Gavin Newsom has a new proposal to send people another round of government checks. Now this time, it's to help offset the record high cost of gas, which will do more than just win him political points in an election year. It can help him balance the state's budget. California had a record surplus last year, and while not as large this year, the excess could still reach $29 billion. And the state constitution actually limits how much money the state legislature can spend each year through a complex formula based on how much money the state collects in taxes. The state has actually rarely surpassed the limit in the more than 4 decades it's been on the books. But revenues have been climbing so fast that Newsom expects the state to be at least $2.6 billion past the limit this year, and perhaps much more. Newsom and state lawmakers have a few options to get back under the limit. They can cut taxes, spend more money on things like infrastructure and public education, or return money to taxpayers. And that last option has been the most popular choice. Last year, the state sent billions of dollars in rebates to taxpayers who met certain income requirements. So this new rebate would actually help people pay for the high cost of fuel. But it's not clear how much the proposal would keep the state under the spending limit. Newsom has already proposed $20 billion in spending on things like maintenance of buildings and drought response. But the Commerce Department reported that the Federal Reserve's favorite inflation measure showed intensifying price pressures in February, rising to its highest annual level since 1983. Excluding food and energy prices, the personal consumption spending price index increased 5.4% from the same period in 2021. That's the biggest jump going back in April 1983. Now, surging prices dented consumer spending, everybody, which rose just 0.2% for a month, and that's below the 0.5%. The Labor Department reported the initial jobless claims for. Now, the Labor Department also reported that initial jobless claims totaled 202,000 for the week, ending in March 26. That was an increase of 14 grand from the previous week, and ahead of the 195,000 job estimate, but still below the pre-crisis level. Continuing claims, which run a week behind the headline number and count those who filed for a second week, dropped to just over 1.3 million. But while the employment picture has tightened, it is inflation that has captured much of the attention as price increases continue, which with an interest rate increase in March, expected to be followed by hikes at each of the remaining 6 meetings this year. And goods prices climbed by 1.1% for the month, the fastest increase since October 2021, pressured by supply chain backups that have bedeviled the economy for much of the crisis era. The problems were expected to be transitory, and that's a description the Fed had to abandon. What do you think about this, folks? Tell me in the comments down below. Is President Biden doing a good job in sending out stimulus payments? Let me know your thoughts on this.
I wish it got more coverage from all of you. I realized it was no conflict. The shipping bill we passed is one of the best ways of reducing costs. And I hope you'll let the American people know about that. It's just not right that when an important bill passes, but it passes with no conflict, nobody writes about it. That's not the way it should be. When there is conflict, of course you should write about it. When there's no conflict and it's important, you should also write about it. Anyway, we've all seen the pictures of scores of ships lining up in ports from LA to Seattle to New York to Savannah. These backlogs cost the American consumer a fortune because all the goods that are coming from overseas, or the parts of goods that are coming from overseas, become much more expensive. Shipping costs have gone up, and I may have the numbers wrong, but the magnitude is right, from about $300 a container across the Pacific to over $1,000. That's a huge expense. And now the Federal Maritime Commission, in a bipartisan bill, Klobuchar-Thune, shepherded through by Senator Cantwell in the Commerce Committee, will be able to be able to undo those backlogs. The big shipping companies don't talk to each other. They're competing with each other. So that's very important. So, as I said, it's been a very, very productive work period, and there's a lot for members to go home and talk about. Senator Durbin.
Thanks, Chuck. President Joe Biden made a strong choice to fill the vacancy on the Supreme Court. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson has an exceptional resume, and literally no one has questioned her credentials to serve on the court. She went through 24 hours of questioning before the Senate Judiciary Committee. It was a real test. I want to say this about it. A majority of the Republican senators on that committee were fair and respectful. They asked tough questions, but that's their job. Unfortunately, a handful went too far in style and in substance. But that's going to happen, I guess, sometimes. I looked at the table a couple times and thought to myself, if she stood up at this point and said, enough, I'm taking my family and going home.
So there is a new way for Social Security recipients to increase their monthly benefits by $800. If you guys want to get the latest news about this fourth stimulus check for Social Security beneficiaries, just continue watching this video. If you are a senior, Social Security, SSI, SSDI, or VA beneficiary, then make sure to watch until the end, because this is how you can receive extra stimulus money next month. Everybody, we all know that lawmakers want to get President Biden's agenda passed as soon as possible. But Congressional Progressive Caucus leaders are now urging the Democrat-controlled Senate to pass President Biden's Build Back Better package by March 1st. Representative Pramila Jayapal said in the months since negotiations around the Build Back Better Act stalled, the case for this legislation has only become more urgent. There is agreement among Senate Democrats on significant parts of this bill: climate action, the care economy, and lowering health costs. There is agreement on the need to reducing costs facing ordinary Americans, and that is exactly what the Build Back Better Act does. So the Congressional Progressive Caucus has been a leading force at the negotiating table during months of lapsed deadlines to pass the massive spending package. Progressive lawmakers have consistently urged two centrist holdouts in the upper chamber, like Manchin and Sinema, to get on board, and with the rest of the Democratic caucus and the majority of House Democrats to send this bill out. Biden's bill would greatly help so many Americans, so I do agree that Manchin and Sinema can make a big positive impact on the country. The good news, though, is that in recent weeks, lawmakers have become more vocal in their desire to see results on passing Biden's agenda. President Biden has already told reporters that he will likely have to break up his plan to invest in social programs and climate policy, but he believes that Congress can still pass parts of it. Biden said he has been talking to a number of colleagues in Congress, and he said he believes he can get win support for more than $500 billion in spending to combat the climate change. And do you think Joe Biden's social spending bill should be approved sooner than later? So, Social Security benefits are usually around $1,500 per month, and this amount can vary depending on the person's lifetime earnings.